I used to laugh at love stories. They weren't real to me, just lies sold in movies. Men always left, hearts always broke. That's what I believed, until he walked in. A man I didn't know was rich. A man who showed me that real love doesn't walk away, it stays. Hey, loves, this story is real. It's mine. If you've ever been heartbroken or stopped believing in love, this video is for you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay with me to the end, because the twist might just restore your faith in forever. Love, for me, was never some sweet fairy tale. It wasn't butterflies, roses, or forever. It was pain dressed up as hope, and I learned that early, too early. I grew up watching women around me break, cry, and put themselves back together with trembling hands. My mother was the strongest woman I've ever known, but even strength has its limits when love keeps bruising your heart. I remember nights as a little girl when I'd pretend to be asleep just to avoid hearing the arguments echoing from the kitchen. My mom's voice would crack, but she'd never cry in front of me. She'd fix her makeup every morning like nothing happened, like the man she loved didn't keep disappointing her over and over again. I think she believed if she stayed strong enough, if she gave enough, he'd finally become the man she deserved. He didn't. And as I grew older, that image of love stayed with me, twisted, damaged. I saw women give everything and receive half-truths in return. It built something in me. Or maybe it tore something down. Either way, I learned that love was not something you could count on. Still, I wanted to believe. I wanted to be different. When I got to college, I met someone. Andre. He was smooth, charming, and said all the right things. He made me feel like maybe love could be different for me. We talked about our dreams, the future, how we'd travel the world together. I was young, naive, and ready to fall, so I did. Hard. What I didn't know was that while I was planning a future, he was playing games behind my back with my best friend. I'll never forget the day I found out. I walked into her apartment unannounced, arms full of takeout for our usual Friday night movie binge, only to find the two of them on her couch, tangled in each other. The food hit the floor. My heart shattered before I even had the chance to ask why. And just like that, something in me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Not in front of them anyway. I walked out with whatever dignity I had left and left them both behind. That night, I sat in my room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how stupid I must have been to believe love was ever real. I wasn't just hurt, I was done. From that point on, I made a decision. Love was a distraction, a weakness. I poured every ounce of my time, my energy, my heart into my work. While other girls were dating, falling in love, and planning weddings, I was building a future, one that didn't require a man. I graduated with honors, landed a job before I even walked the stage. I started climbing, and I didn't stop. I became the woman I used to dream of being, sharp, driven, unshakable. I bought my first apartment at 27, started my own consulting firm by 30. People respected me, admired me, even envied me. But deep down, I was still that girl from college, the one who had her heart broken in the most humiliating way. I just wore better clothes now and smiled less. People always asked why I was single. "You're beautiful," they'd say. "Successful, smart. How come no man's locked you down yet?" And I'd laugh it off. "I'm married to my career," I'd joke. But the truth was, I didn't trust anyone enough to even try. My heart had walls higher than most people could climb. Every time someone got close, I pulled back. I knew how the story ended, and I didn't need a sequel to that pain. I convinced myself I didn't need love, that it was optional, that if I just stayed focused, I'd be fulfilled. I had everything I wanted, except the one thing I'd convinced myself I didn't need: love. But here's the thing about life. It has a way of surprising you. Just when you think your heart is sealed shut, someone walks in with a key you didn't know you were still holding. But that part of the story, that came later. For now, I was just a woman who'd stopped believing in love, who built a fortress around her heart and told herself she was better off alone. At least, that's what I thought. Until him. It was an ordinary Saturday, nothing special. Just one of those quiet mornings when the world feels a little softer. Cool air, light breeze, and just enough time to breathe. I remember I was wearing this oversized sweater, no makeup, hair in a bun. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just needed coffee and space to clear my mind. There's this little cafe I love tucked inside a used bookstore, not far from where I live. It smells like cinnamon and paper, like memories and comfort. I went there often to read, journal, or just sit with my thoughts. That morning, I had no idea my life was about to take a turn I never saw coming. I walked in, ordered my usual chai latte, and scanned for a quiet corner. The place was fuller than normal. I spotted an empty seat across from a man already sitting alone at a small table near the back. I hesitated, but he looked up and smiled. A warm, disarming kind of smile. Not pushy, not flirtatious, just kind. "Feel free," he said, motioning to the empty chair. "I don't bite." His voice was deep, calm, like jazz on vinyl. I nodded and sat down, figuring I'd just mind my business. But somehow, conversation found its way between us. At first, it was small talk, books, coffee, the weather. But something about the way he spoke made me want to keep talking. He listened, not the fake kind of listening where someone just waits for their turn to speak, but the real kind, the kind that makes you feel seen. His name was Marcus. He had this quiet confidence about him, wore simple clothes, dark jeans, black turtleneck, brown leather watch. No flash, no labels screaming for attention, just calm energy and depth. I assumed he was a teacher, maybe a writer. He definitely looked like someone who thought deeply and spoke only when it mattered. We ended up talking for over an hour about the books we loved, about heartbreak, about how both of us didn't believe in forever anymore. I told him how I used to once, before the betrayal, before the letdowns. And he didn't try to fix it or offer cliches. He just nodded like he understood. There was a silence at one point, not awkward, just peaceful. He looked at me and said, "You carry yourself like someone who's had to hold her own heart together." That stopped me, because he was right. I'd spent years putting on strength like armor, learning how to laugh without letting anyone too close. And here was this man who didn't know anything about me, speaking like he could read my soul. When I left that day, I didn't expect anything to come of it. I thanked him for the conversation and walked out with a smile I didn't even realize I was wearing. But the next weekend, I went back. Same cafe, same time, and so did he. It became a thing, quietly, naturally. Every Saturday morning. No labels, no pressure. Just two people sharing space and stories. I still didn't know much about him. He never bragged, never dropped hints about money or status. And honestly, I liked it that way. He felt real, grounded. One morning, I asked him, half joking, "So, what do you actually do when you're not reading Tolstoy and making deep observations about strangers?" He smiled, took a sip of his coffee, and said, "Consulting. A bit of investing. It's boring stuff, really." I didn't press further. I was just enjoying his presence. He made me laugh, like really laugh, not just polite giggles. He remembered little things I said, like how I took my tea or which poems made me cry. And he never tried to rush me or push the relationship forward. He was patient. And for a woman like me, who'd been broken and cautious for so long, patience felt like luxury, like safety. Still, I was guarded. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe he was too good to be true. Maybe he was hiding something, or worse, just playing a role. But every time we met, he showed up exactly the same, consistent, present, kind. It was confusing. I wasn't used to a man giving without expecting, listening without trying to fix me, being there without needing control. I remember telling myself, it's just coffee, just conversation. Don't fall. Don't believe the dream. But something in me, something small and quiet, was beginning to soften. And though I didn't know it then, that softness was the start of something I thought I'd buried for good. Hope, not in love yet, but hope. And that was dangerous enough. I wish I could say I gave in right away, that I let my guard down, trusted what I was feeling, and opened my heart like some movie character who finds her happy ending in Act Two. But that wasn't me. Not then. Even as Marcus kept showing up, every weekend, same time, same smile. I kept my walls high. I couldn't help it. I'd been burned too many times, and I had trained myself to expect disappointment, even when everything looked perfect on the outside. He asked me out, officially, a couple weeks after one of our cafe conversations had gotten unusually personal. We'd been talking about childhood, how broken beginnings leave quiet scars. I had told him about my mom, how I watched her lose herself in the name of love, how I'd promised myself I wouldn't let that happen to me. His eyes softened and he said, "Would you have dinner with me sometime?" Not coffee, a real dinner. I panicked. I smiled politely, thanked him, and said, "I'm not really looking for anything serious." He didn't flinch, just nodded and said, "I understand." And the next weekend, he was still there. He didn't disappear. Didn't act cold, didn't make it weird. I didn't expect that. Most men I'd met in the past, once they realized I wasn't an easy win, or that I wasn't going to swoon the moment they asked me out, they lost interest. But Marcus wasn't chasing a trophy. He was just present, steady. 2 weeks later, I asked him to coffee. It wasn't a date, at least not in my mind. Just two friends catching up. But I wore lip gloss that day, and when I caught myself checking my reflection in the window before walking in, I knew I was lying to myself. We laughed more than usual that day. I let myself smile without filtering it. He shared a story about a trip he took to Brazil years ago and how he got stranded in a rainstorm with nothing but a half-dead phone and a Portuguese phrase book. I told him about the time I got locked out of my dorm in college, wearing a towel and fuzzy socks. We were both cracking up. For once, it felt easy. After that, things started to shift. We weren't officially dating, not really, but the energy between us changed. The way he looked at me, the way I caught myself looking back. And yet, I was still waiting for something to go wrong. It was like this little voice in my head wouldn't shut up. He's hiding something. He's too good to be true. Don't get comfortable. I questioned everything. Why was he always free on weekends? Why didn't he ever talk about work in detail? Why didn't he have social media? One night, I even Googled him, just his full name, out of curiosity or maybe fear. But nothing came up. Nothing obvious anyway. No scandals, no criminal record, not even a LinkedIn profile. Just a few mentions in old business articles I didn't think much of. Still, I kept my heart on lockdown. I remember sitting across from him during dinner one night. Yes, we had finally graduated to dinner, and thinking, this man might actually be everything he claims to be. But I don't know if I'm brave enough to believe it. That's the thing people don't tell you about being hurt. It changes the way you accept kindness. When love comes again, soft, genuine, patient, it doesn't feel like magic. It feels like a setup, like a beautiful lie you've seen before. I kept testing him in little ways. I'd cancel plans last minute just to see how he reacted. He never got mad, just said, "I'll be here when you're ready." I'd go silent for a few days, and when I finally messaged him, he'd respond with the same warmth like no time had passed. I started realizing he wasn't trying to win me. He wasn't playing a game. He was just being himself. And it scared me because suddenly I was the one who had something to lose. I'd spent years convincing myself that love wasn't real, that men couldn't be trusted, that independence was the only thing I could count on. But here was this man, this simple, soft spoken, patient man, showing me a different possibility. And the more time I spent with him, the more I started to wonder. Maybe I was the one who didn't know what love looked like. Maybe love wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic passion. Maybe it was consistency, kindness, someone showing up over and over, even when you're too scared to ask them to. I wasn't in love yet, but something in me was shifting, and that scared me more than anything. It's funny how the most important moments in life don't come with a warning. No drum roll, no flashing lights. Sometimes it's just an ordinary evening that flips your world upside down. That night started like so many others. We were at his place for the first time. It wasn't flashy or overdone, just warm. Clean lines, cozy lighting, shelves lined with books, jazz humming softly in the background. It didn't feel like some bachelor pad. It felt like someone had taken their time making it feel like home. And honestly, that made me even more suspicious. I remember thinking, either he's hiding a girlfriend in the closet, or there's something about him I still don't know. We were sitting on his balcony, sipping wine. The city lights flickered in the distance, and the air was just cool enough to need a blanket. I was wrapped up in one, legs tucked beneath me, feeling unusually comfortable. Too comfortable for a woman who swore she didn't do this kind of thing. We were talking about our parents again. He had a strained relationship with his father, rarely mentioned his mother. And I told him quietly, I think I stopped trusting men the day I realized my mom never really healed. He looked at me for a long time, like he wasn't sure if he should say what he was about to. Then he put his glass down and said, There's something I want to tell you, and you don't have to respond. Just hear me out. I sat up straighter, heart immediately on alert. This was it, the secret. The moment the too good to be true turned into just too true. He leaned back, took a breath, and said, I come from money, a lot of it. My family owns several companies. Old money, private wealth. I walked away from most of it after college, but I still manage the investments. That's my job. I'm a billionaire, technically, but I don't live like it. Not anymore. I froze. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My brain was doing somersaults. Billionaire? What? Everything started clicking into place. His calm confidence, the subtle luxury in his home, the way he never really talked about work. It wasn't just consulting and investing. It was serious investing. I should have been impressed, shocked, excited, but I felt betrayed. I stood up without thinking. So you've just been, what, testing me? Hiding this? He stayed seated, calm, like he'd prepared for this moment. I wasn't hiding it to trick you. I needed to know you saw me. Not the money, not the name, just me. It hit me in waves. I'd spent years avoiding men who used money as power, and here was a man who had more wealth than I could imagine, and never used it once to win me. I never lied, he added. I just didn't lead with it, because I've seen what happens when people know. Their tone changes, their expectations shift. I didn't want that with you. Part of me wanted to be mad, to storm out, to protect myself like I always had. But another part of me, the quiet part that had been softening, knew he was telling the truth. And not just telling it, trusting me with it. I sat back down, slowly, carefully. That's a lot to take in, I whispered. I know. And you thought I'd what? Walk away if you told me sooner? I thought you might not trust it. Or worse, you'd only trust that. And I didn't want that kind of love. The honesty in his voice cracked something open in me. For so long, I believed men only wanted to take, to control, to impress. But here was a man who withheld the one thing most men would flaunt, because he wanted love that had nothing to do with status. That night, for the first time in years, I let my guard all the way down. We didn't kiss. We didn't do anything dramatic. We just sat there, quiet, with his truth between us. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't afraid of falling anymore. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a fall. It was a landing. And I had finally found solid ground. They say the real test of love isn't how someone treats you when everything is good. It's how they show up when everything is uncertain. When your dreams take a turn that doesn't fit their plans. When life asks you to choose, and you don't know what choosing really means. For me, that moment came when I got a job offer. A big one. I'd been quietly applying for months, not because I was unhappy with my career, but because I wanted to push myself, to grow. I didn't tell Marcus, not because I was keeping secrets, but because part of me didn't think it would go anywhere. And maybe, deep down, I didn't want to imagine what would happen if it did. Then came the email, an executive position at a media firm in D.C., triple my current salary, full creative control, a chance to lead the kind of projects I'd always dreamed about. But it also meant leaving everything, my apartment, my friends, Marcus. When I read the offer, my stomach flipped. It should have been a moment of celebration. But all I felt was pressure, anxiety, conflict. I told him that night. We were walking near the lake just after dinner, and I blurted it out in the middle of a sentence, like ripping off a Band-Aid. I got a job offer in D.C., I said. It's a big one. He didn't flinch. He just nodded and said, "Okay, tell me about it." So I did. All the details, all the pros and cons, every part of me that was torn in two. And when I finally stopped talking, I looked at him, expecting a reaction. I don't know what I thought he'd say. Maybe he'd beg me to stay. Maybe he'd offer to fly out every weekend or ask me to turn it down so we could see where this relationship was going. I was waiting for him to make it about us, but instead he said this: "I think you should take it. You've worked too hard to let fear hold you back. And no matter where you go, I'll be here. Whether we work out or not, I want you to chase everything you've earned." His words were quiet, but they hit me like thunder. I didn't even realize I was crying until he reached out and wiped a tear from my cheek. That was the moment, that exact second, standing under the streetlight with tears in my eyes and his voice in my ears, that I knew what real love looked like. Not control, not guilt, not sacrifice disguised as devotion, but freedom, support, selflessness. Marcus wasn't afraid of losing me because his love wasn't rooted in fear. It was rooted in faith. He didn't try to make me choose. He didn't use the weight of our feelings to change my decision. He just stood there, holding space for my dreams, even if it meant risking his own heart. And that shook me. For years, I had believed love meant bending, compromising, shrinking to fit someone else's version of the future. But here was a man who wasn't asking me to choose between me and him. He was cheering for both. The job gave me 2 weeks to decide, and in those 2 weeks I thought about everything: who I was, who I'd become, and what I truly wanted for my life. The career move made sense. The money, the status, the opportunity, all of it checked the right boxes. But when I imagined waking up every morning without Marcus's quiet laugh, without his notes tucked inside books, without Saturday mornings at our favorite cafe, it didn't feel right. I wasn't choosing to stay for him. I was choosing to stay for us, for the life we were building. for the love that had asked nothing of me except that I be myself. I turned down the offer, not out of fear, not out of comfort, but out of clarity. Because for the first time in my life, I realized success without someone to share it with is just noise. I had found something rare, something real, and I wasn't willing to trade that for a title or a paycheck. So I stayed, and when I told him, Marcus didn't smile wide or celebrate like he'd won. He just pulled me close and whispered, "Thank you for trusting this." And in that moment, I knew I hadn't given anything up. I had simply chosen the kind of love that lets you fly and still gives you a place to land. Forever used to scare me. It felt like a trap, like something people promised in the moment but couldn't deliver when things got hard. I had watched forever fall apart too many times to believe in it. It was always just a word, never a real destination. Until Marcus. After turning down the job, everything between us deepened in a quiet, steady way. We didn't suddenly become perfect. We still had our disagreements. I liked planning every detail, and he was more go with the flow. I needed constant communication. He needed quiet time to think. But the difference was, neither of us ever threatened to walk away. The love didn't disappear when things got hard. It stayed, steady and solid. I began to realize that real love isn't loud. It doesn't need to scream. It shows up in 1,000 soft ways. The way he remembered I don't like my coffee too hot. How he rubbed the back of my neck when I'd been sitting at my desk too long. How he'd text me after client meetings just to say, "Proud of you." It was in the way he spoke about the future, not as something he was building, but something we were growing together. One rainy Saturday, we found ourselves back at the bookstore cafe where we first met. It had been over a year since that first conversation, but when I walked in, I still got that same flutter in my chest. That safe, peaceful feeling I never knew existed until him. We ordered our drinks and sat at our usual table in the back. He was quiet that day, not in a bad way, just thoughtful. I asked if something was on his mind. He smiled, stood up, and pulled a small box from his coat pocket. No big crowd, no dramatic gesture. Just us, just that moment. "I didn't know what love looked like until I met you," he said. "You taught me how to be still, how to listen, how to love without fear. So, if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life learning how to love you even better." I froze, not because I was unsure, but because it felt so full circle. Here we were, in the exact place I first questioned if I could ever trust him. Now I couldn't imagine my life without him. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just smiled and whispered, "Yes." And that was it. No flashy ring. No Instagram perfect story. Just two people who had taken their time, built trust brick by brick, and arrived at a love that felt calm, rooted, real. A few months later, we got married in a small ceremony in the garden behind his house. Just close friends, family, laughter, and joy. My mom cried the whole time, not out of sadness, but because, in her words, "You found the love I never did, and you let yourself receive it." That stuck with me because I had spent so long believing I didn't deserve this, that love like this didn't exist for women like me, strong women, guarded women, women who'd been lied to, cheated on, left behind. But it does exist, and it's not some fantasy written in novels or sold in romantic comedies. It's in the quiet moments, in shared glances across a room, in long walks after hard days, in sitting in silence and still feeling understood. It's in the way someone lets you be all of yourself, messy, driven, doubtful, radiant, and never asks you to dim your light. Marcus gave me that, and more. He gave me forever, not as a promise whispered in passion, but as a commitment lived out daily, not something grand. but something honest. And now, when I look at him across the table or feel his hand reach for mine in the dark, I don't think about betrayal. I don't brace for impact. I just breathe, because this is what forever looks like. Not perfect, but safe, not loud, but lasting, not a lie, but love, real, patient, and mine. If you've ever felt like love passed you by, don't give up yet. Sometimes love hides in bookstores. Sometimes forever starts with coffee. If my story touched you, drop a heart in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes in love or needs to.